Breaking news, a state-led investigation into the deadly police chase that ended with 2 people dead has found that officers did not follow department policy, and the system itself failed the officers who took part in the chase. It was November 29th when the chase ended in East Cleveland with 13 officers firing 137 rounds into a car, killing Timothy Russell and Melissa Williams. As you can see, Mayor Frank Jackson is speaking about the findings now. They were released earlier today. Let's listen in.
Early this morning, Director Flask and Chief McGrath attended a briefing at U.S. Attorney's office at BCI. About 9:40 this morning, I spoke with Attorney General DeWine, and he had a copy of his personal remarks delivered to me in my office. He indicated an emphasis on failure of the system as a major factor in his report on that event. The report prepared by the Attorney General and BCI will be just one of the things that we will be considering as we continue our administrative review. Our review will include a direct interview with personnel, all of which I believe have been interviewed by the BCI, and some of which are included in his statements. And a review of the evidence and the facts that include videotapes, audio tapes, and all the other kinds of things. So again, his report will be one of the things we will consider as we move forward. And then we will overlay all of the facts as we find them. We'll overlay that with our policies and procedures and proceed accordingly. Now, again, the information that was made public today by the Attorney General will be just a part of what we do and look at as we move forward and as the Chief continues his investigation and administrative review. So I'll allow the Chief to make a few comments, then we'll open it up for questions. Okay?
Thanks, Mayor. Good afternoon. As the Mayor indicated, I received a briefing this morning from the Attorney General regarding the investigation of the pursuit and the use of deadly force. To reiterate an important point, the city does not have jurisdiction to determine whether or not the officers involved in the shooting were justified or not justified. That decision rests with the county prosecutor and the grand jury. Today, currently, we are still in the process with our review of the police pursuit. As I mentioned last week, our review is ongoing due to the number of personnel involved and because at the time, BCI asked for us to wait to interview key personnel. With BCI's investigation complete, we can move forward with our review and interviews, not only relative to the pursuit, but also relative to the deadly force incident. The committee will examine the investigatory records released by the Attorney General and consider them as part of our review process. We are not at a point where we will predict the outcome of our review or offer opinions on the actions of any of the officers. As the Mayor stated, we will determine whether or not any officers or supervisors violated any policy, rule, or regulation, and if they did, they will be held accountable. Thank you.
Chief, according to the Attorney General, this was a failure of the system and it was a failure of command. What responsibility do you take for that?
Well, my response to that would be, in the Cleveland Division of Police, we have our policies and procedures and general police orders to address pursuits and to address non-deadly and deadly force incidents. Our policies are better than the national standards. We also conduct our training relative to our policies and procedures. So I know that the officers are trained and the supervisors are trained and the guidelines are out there in writing as to what they're supposed to do. Now, as we go through our review process, if we discover officers or supervisors that did not comply with our general police orders, our rules and regulations, someone will be held accountable.
The Attorney General says 59 cars obviously did. What's your response to that?
I have no response until our review is completed.
Chief, Mayor, do you still have complete confidence in Chief McGrath and the director's class? I mean, the report is very damning of command and communication within the department.
Well, let me put it this way, is that, let me answer the question first. Yes, I have complete confidence, and the chief is the chief and will continue to be the chief. The director is the director and will continue to be the director. And now, the interesting part is that it was a report, as I read Attorney General's report, now I haven't seen the facts or anything, but as I read his statement, that it put a lot of emphasis on the system as to whether or not there was a state of mind of the officers at the time of the incident. Now, we will review what he has said and what those officers have said based on information that the chief may have or facts or evidence that may come forward as we interview them. And in that case, we will see if, in fact, what the assumptions that were made are correct or not. But yes, I have confidence in the chief, and I have confidence in the director.
Thank you. Given how damning this report is from the AG, it seems almost like now the fox will be guarding the chicken coop, right, with the chief continuing to investigate his own officers. What considerations?
Well, it's interesting that we are to do the administration. BCI and AG was to do whether or not there was criminal violations here. So we're in a position of having to defend ourselves in our conduct, and we have been the transparent ones. So I'm just saying to you that I have complete confidence in the chief and have complete confidence in the safety director. We will do our job as we committed in the beginning, and we will do our job as we move forward, and we will overlay policy and procedure on evidence as it presents itself, and we will take action accordingly.
Chief, could you talk a little bit about your pursuit policy when it comes to radio frequencies? Is it policy that when officers start on a chase that they tune to the same frequency, or do they stay in their division frequency on the radio?
In a pursuit, those cars that join the pursuit have to go to the radio frequency where the pursuit was initiated.
So you don't have one general frequency, no matter where it happens in the city, that all officers can go on so they can hear everybody and not go to individual division frequencies?
No, sir. The officers and supervisors within the division know that where a pursuit is initiated, that's the radio channel we stay on, so we don't have that confusion. If you have a pursuit going from the 1st to the 2nd district, the 2nd district cars are advised the pursuit's coming your way. They will transition to that other channel and get permission to, first they should get permission from their supervisors to engage.
But if you had one frequency, wouldn't everybody would have heard the officer who I believe called in and said there was backfire on the vehicle? If you had one frequency, because he was calling in on a different frequency.
If I can interject, if I understand Chief correctly, he's saying if they would have followed procedure and protocol, they would have been on one frequency.
Yeah, but that's not the question I asked, Mayor. Right. I asked the Chief the question, if you had one frequency that everybody went to, wouldn't that have been heard by all the officers then, Chief?
And the Mayor's absolutely correct. You know, we can talk around in circles, but our policy and procedure is, if you're going to engage in the pursuit, you go to the channel where the pursuit was initiated, and that's what they should have done, period. That's our policy.
And then there would have been one frequency.
If that's the case, then why did so many officers not go to the originating channel? And why did none of the officers ask for permission to be involved in the chase when that is also the policy of the police department?
Those are the questions that we will answer in our administrative review. That is why the following day I put the committee together to answer those particular questions.
Well, there's a systemic failure, according to the Attorney General's office. Have you not done anything since this incident to address what is this systemic failure? Certainly you would have noticed yourselves that something had gone wrong that night. And what have you done as a department to address that?
Let me say this systemic failure. You have those failures when you do not have any policies and procedures in place, you do not have any training in place. Currently, we have the policies and procedures in place and the training to address that. Now, if some officers or supervisors choose not to follow our policies and procedures, then they'll be held accountable.
All of them failed, right?
We can't say that just yet. We have to do the review. Once the review is completed, then I'll have additional responses to those questions. But currently, right now, it's under review.
Okay, we're going to move on, Paul.
Thanks, Maureen. The officer who stood on the car and fired a total of 49 shots, is he back on the street? And the supervisor, the Attorney General, is accurate, did nothing a little to intermediate that night. Are they both on the job still, doing the same job?
No, sir, they're not. Well, all the officers involved in the deadly force incident are on restricted duty, detailed to the police academy.
And the supervisor, who the Attorney General refers to several times as not being an active participant, kind of standing back and thinking it was an active shooter situation.
The supervisor that initiated the pursuit, or was when the pursuit initiated, wasn't at the scene, I believe, when the deadly force incident took place. He's currently assigned to the 2nd District.
Chief, I'd like to ask you a following question. Can you help our viewers understand why something as basic as stop sticks would not be in police cruisers in Cleveland?
Well, the sticks that you mentioned are in the supervisor's cars, and they're to be used at the discretion of the supervisors, and we do have a policy and procedure relative to that particular tool. Now, if the supervisors that evening chose not to take that route, that's their decision.
Well, they said they did not have working stop sticks in 3 years.
I would have to.
Accurate?
Sir, I don't have an answer to that question.
You don't know if that's accurate or not? Or?
I don't know if that's accurate or not. I do know that when the supervisor gets in his car, he's supposed to do what? Check the equipment in his car and make sure it works. And if it doesn't, forward a Form 1 up the chain of command so we could take care of that situation. To my knowledge, I haven't seen one of those Form 1s.
Very last one. I think would you clarify, was there a systemic failure in your view? Was there or was there not?
No, sir, a systemic, no, because the policies and procedures and training's in place. Now, once the review is completed, we will determine if, in fact, everybody complied with our policies and procedures. If they did not, somebody will be held accountable.
Mayor, it sounds like you were a little bit surprised by the scope of the Attorney General's investigation. Did you expect them to go as deeply into the particulars of the chase and policies involved as they did?
No, I would. We knew that since they had asked for our policies, that would be part of the report. So we knew that would be part of the report. Now, again, our assumption was that it would look at whether there was justifiable use of deadly force, as opposed to having just a systemic failure of the system, and as he came out to report. So that, the slanting of it and the weight put to that was something we had not expected. We had expected, as if we would have done it, we would have looked at the facts and evidence and the officers at the time of that, when it occurred, and seeing whether or not their use of deadly force was appropriate.
But you didn't expect them to be judgmental about...
Well, whenever if I was a prosecutor, I was a city prosecutor, and whenever stuff was brought to me by an investigator, it presented the facts.
Mr. Mayor, this AG report and any other thing may have a very powder keg aspect to it when it comes to the community. What have you put in place? What are you thinking about to make sure that those who may be bothered by this won't overreact?
Well, but interesting question. If you ask that question, that means you feel some underlying tension and some, perhaps in your question, some skepticism of the report. I mean, that's what I get out of your report, because you asked me what am I going to do about it. In a normal situation, it would just be a report. And then we will conduct our side. Now, what I will do is meet with people, as I've done throughout this, be open and transparent in the way in which we talk to them. And I know that they will ask the same questions that you're asking, and they will also ask questions around the report and the validity of the report. I know that. So I'll continue to have conversations with people. But the fact that you asked the question meant that as you read it and you heard what happened, you know, just the fact that you asked the question.
Real quick. Attorneys for the police officers are suggesting that one of the reasons officers may not have all the resources they need, such as the stop sticks, the chopper wasn't in the sky that night, is because several $100,000s of dollars in budget revenue is often returned and cited as a positive thing by the Cleveland Police Department.
Well, he don't need to answer. I'm going to tell you, we supply police officers with whatever they need to do their job, and we give them whatever they need to do their job in a professional way. If that means they need overtime, we give them overtime. If that means they need vests, we give them vests. If that means they need weapons, we give them weapons. If that means they need new cars, we give them new cars. We give them what they need to do their job. That's what we do.
Talking about resources, Chief,
Yep.
Are there enough patrol cars today to cover all the shifts? I'm being told that officers are sometimes sitting and waiting at stations for patrol cars to come in so that then they can go out. Are some patrol cars not running and there's a concern there that you don't have enough?
That's the first time this week, this month, in the last 6 months that that's been brought to my attention. We do get a vehicle list that comes out and tells us that, in fact, which cars are up, which ones are in for repair, which ones are being fixed for damages. But to the best of my knowledge, as of right now, that's the first time I heard that we didn't have enough cars. When I go out back to the office, I'll check it. But if we did, there's no information that came up through the chain of command that was an issue.
And that wasn't a problem November 29th when you sent out forms to everybody later to find out who exactly was in cars?
No, sir, not at all. The only reason we did that, sir, was the fact that not all our cars are equipped with AVL. All our frontline cars are, and then some of the older cars, they were not equipped with AVL. That was the only reason we did that. We're trying to locate all the AVL and non-AVL vehicles.
One question for the chief and one for the mayor. Chief, in your knowledge of police training, is there any type of training ever that teaches an officer to stand on the suspect's vehicle and fire at him?
You know, I was in the SWAT unit 11 years. And we taught tactical training not only for the Division of Police here in Cleveland, we did Akron, Lorraine, ATF, we did it all. And there are circumstances out there where you can't dictate the training because it just happens that way. Per se, do we teach officers to jump on a car? No. But does that mean that the officer, that's the only option he had? I won't know until I review BCI's investigative file.
Have you ever